Hello. There's the reset. Hello, friends. My name's host Eric. I'm the host talking with famous people. And this morning, I asked the provocative question: did we name evil ESFP? So, the reason I asked this question is because I was talking with Olivia the other night coming in. This person named Olivia, who was apparently new, honestly a new person to the channel, came in and did the same thing that combatively wrong people always do, We could call this group of people combatively wrong. The combatively wrong people who are, hi Ron Allen Salon, who are determined to both be wrong, reject every possible means of being right, and scream it from the rooftops, Should we call those people ESFPs? I don't know what to call them. They're combatively wrong. They're so uniform in their particular form of combative wrongness, though, that it makes the most sense to just call them ESFPs. So what's shocking to anybody who's not an ESFP is that they're not joking. They're not trolling. They're not playing around. They really believe this stuff, Gary Glitter, the rock star, was typed ESFP, is pretty evil. The thing is, even if you don't think ESFPs are evil, it's hard to imagine a world in which they're not anti-civilization. They're definitely opposed to all the things that make life good and humanity successful and healthy and happy, which is they're opposed to universal communication. They like I said, people have, that's fine. People are always doing hits on me. That's to be expected. I mean, they're all lies. That's the thing. People can attack me all they want, but they're a bunch of cowardly liars, because I'm so super open on everything. So like somebody like this Olivia chick comes in, right? And she's being combatively wrong in the same way that ESFPs are always combatively wrong. And people have a hard time believing it. This has got to be just the same troll again in different clothing. But the fact is, I don't know exactly how many different, ESFPs have come around and behaved like ESFPs, and people go, well, it must be Cloud, or it must be another ESFP we know. When in reality, there's just a lot of ESFPs out there, and they all think badly the same way. I slept pretty well, I guess, for a short night's sleep. I didn't sleep a long night, but I got a good 5 hours or so, I guess. The thing is, I'm always talking about how, that person obviously, if they think I have bad TI, then, they're obviously lying to themselves, don't know what it is, or an ESFP themselves, or who knows. It's so ridiculous to say I've got bad TI that if somebody says that, then we can dismiss their opinion entirely. They have no notion of what cognitive functions are. They have no concept of what logic means. They're one of those combatively wrong people. And personally, I can't imagine any way to more thoroughly shit on civilization than to deny the utility of words to having meaningful communications between people. It's like, it's the very definition of uncivilized. Do you think they approach everything as an argument? I think around here on the internet where people ideate, they take action. but they know that they can't take a lot of SE action because it's the internet. So they make an attempt to take any action, but of course they're incapable of using NI well. It's fourth slot without any TI. They're incapable of using TI well, and they ignore their SI even. So they've got basically no epistemology at all. They're like animals in that regard. They've got very little epistemology to them. So I don't know what to do with it. It's like, I don't want to be groupist myself, but the critique of ESFPs seems to be the most correct actual label. I could just call them combatively wrong people, but to the extent that they can't help it, it's because they're ESFPs, right? It's not because they're horrible people. They just are not capable of doing any good reasoning. The problem is, of course, because their reasoning so terrible, they shouldn't engage in it. But, they're action types. You can totally see that in the ESFP coming around here. They're action types. Olivia comes in, first statement she makes is, I'm every type. Action, right? Taking some sort of action. Trying to kick the anthill. Make the ants squirm around. Just like Trump. Every time people try to gather together some sort of opposition to his bullshit, he'd kick the anthill again. Rather than actually engage with human beings as though they were human beings. It's like Olivia accused me of dehumanizing her, but of course, I treat people like human beings. I listen to what they say and take their words seriously. ESFPs do not. They do not treat people like human beings. So, do we call it evil ESFP? I can't think of a better word for it. It's like, I don't think that specific peculiar type of combative wrongness is expressed anywhere but with ESFP. Now, ESFP. Now, I thought that at first too, Boba Fett, but I came to see that no, that's demonstrative. It's so shitty is why, right? If it were third slide, it would be a lot better than that. It's incredibly shitty. It just sounds infuriating. It sounds absolutely infuriating. And the difference, of course, between ESFPs and, say, an ENTP is when I made a video last night, I was very much in my FI, but it was appropriate, It was the appropriate way to deliberate given what I was dealing with. Trump is an ESFP as clear as day. You cannot ever convince me he's anything but an ESFP. He's as textbook an ESFP as you get. Absolutely textbook. I mean, the thing is, I agree with you, Boba Fett. He absolutely does inspire large groups of idiots. And it's a shame. It's definitely a shame. But that's the thing about evil, right? Is evil's always appealing. There's something very appealing to it. It's nothing but FI, Boba Fett. Remember, TI is a way of justifying things. He never justified anything with TI, ever. So once you remember that, then you realize, oh, fuck, there's no way he's TI. I mean, no, definitely ESFP. 100% certain that Trump's ESFP. There's no doubt about that. But remember, this is the most important thing to remember. TI is a way of justifying things, right? So it's like you can tell he has no TI at all. TE has plenty of within frame rationale. In other words, don't challenge the frame. Be effective within the frame. That's TE. He's textbook SE, Dom. So SC Dom without TI will always resort to kicking the anthill. Then you saw Trump do it over and over and over and over again. Every time he's about to sort of get in trouble for something, he did something else shitty so that people would be all scurrying around again. Every time he was asked to justify himself, he said things like "talk's cheap," and "it's a hunch." None of his explanations for things made any sense. None of them were consistent across instances. One time he said ridiculously, "We shouldn't do that because it doesn't have a limiting principle," ignoring the fact that he never once applied a limiting principle himself. Only in ESFP is that kind of evil, right? That kind of stupid. I mean, Boba Fett, again, what do we see with somebody like Cloud, Boba Fett? What do we see with somebody like Cloud, who's definitely an ESFP? You see a lot of self-aggrandizing statements, right? A lot of large self-aggrandizing statements. What do we see with Trump? A lot of loud self-aggrandizing statements. So, I mean, that's what you're seeing. It's like Trump is definitely not using an absolute value of FE because you can see clearly that he doesn't give a fuck about people who aren't on his side. Right? That's not absolute value FE, that's instrumental in FE. When he's perceived badly by half the population or more, terribly by half the population or more, doesn't move him at all. He just chooses to focus on the information that he wants to believe, regardless of any judgment. The shit he put out there is true is just so textbook ESFP. I mean, just a complete tard, you know? You know the whole Cloud story? I mean, well, yeah, right. I get it. I get the fact that there's a... Keep in mind, Boba Fett, most people who voted for Trump in the first election against Hillary didn't vote for Trump. They voted against Hillary. Okay? And almost everybody who voted for Biden didn't vote for Biden. They voted against Trump. So it's like the small group of idiots who are susceptible to ESFP bullshit gets very fired up about it, you know? And there is a small group of people who are very enthusiastic about Trump, but that's because they're not using their critical thinking at all. And they're not being objective in their evaluation. It's like the man disgraced the office of the presidency by having zero regard for the truth. And ESTPs have a lot more regard for the truth than that. ESTPs you can talk to. ESTP, Boba Fett, did you hear what I said? I said most people in the first election didn't vote for Trump. They voted against Hillary. Obviously, they cast their vote for Trump, but their motivation was that they were voting against Hillary. And in the second election, very few people actually voted for Biden. They may have cast their vote for Biden, but they were actually voting against Trump. That's what I said. So, and that's true in both instances. And it's only Trump nuts who think otherwise. Well, you think wrong, Sean O'Neill. He's definitely an ESFP. I don't want to argue about it, though. Yeah, I really don't, because there's no point, right? It's what Oswald Amunia says. He doesn't have an ounce of TI anywhere near within 100 yards of him. One bit of TI within 100 yards of him. But it's like I probably don't like arguing about type. It's not, unlike other things. There's no definitive proof. I mean, Boba Fett. That's just ridiculous. That's insane. That would mean that he's like me in his justifications for things, and he's not at all. If you think he is, then you're not paying any attention at all. That's why I don't like arguing about cognitive functions. Okay, stop blaming shit on personality disorders. Kimberly was a straight up ISFJ, clear as day, despite the fact that she had BPD. And there was no disputing the fact that she was an ISFJ with BPD, not an INFP or something like that. So same thing with Trump. He's definitely an ESFP. He may also have narcissistic personality disorder, or it may simply be that ESFPs are all like that. As far as I can tell, they are. I'm not a fan, but I'm even much more not a fan of you having some sort of bizarro world in which he's TI tool. I mean, do you not understand TI at all? It's a way of justifying things. It's paying attention to which arguments are the winning arguments, right? We think they're most logical. Trump is a billion miles from that, no matter how much of a fan you are. There's no sane person in the universe who thinks that Trump made well-reasoned, logical decisions. I mean, you'd have to have your head buried in a big pile of stupidity to think that. You'd almost have to be willfully stupid to think that. It's insane. Again, Gen X Seal, I wish that were the case. I wish it were the case that he were an immature and damaged ESFP. I'm afraid it's not. I'm afraid he's a textbook ESFP. He's okay. Well, Boba Fett, look, let's say I'm completely biased by my disliking of Trump. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm biased in my typing of Trump, right? In other words, having a bias doesn't mean being influenced by that bias in making your decision making. That's TI, what I just used. I have a bias, but I'm not influenced by it in my decision making. The difference between me and Trump. Trump has a bias, and that is his decision making. That's FI. That's FI tool. That's textbook FI tool. We mistake FI as some sort of ideals or values or personal whatever. FI tool, remember, is instrumental. It's not an absolute value. And second of all, remember what we're actually talking about. We're not talking about your earnest, authentic self. We're talking about a way to make decisions, a way of establishing what the status of something is, a way of deciding whether something's true or false. And we see it all the time, every time an ESFP comes around here. What do? They make claims without any justifications. When you ask them to make justifications and you push hard, they give you shit that's not a justification, they shift ground, or at absolute best, you get some sort of an example out of them. They don't understand how to hear words and know their meaning and respond accordingly. It is simply the truth. There's no disputing it. I mean, there's no way that Trump is either an ISFJ or an INFJ. Zero chance. Way too combative. You got to remember that there are two elements to an ESFP that you can look to determine they are ESFP pretty determinatively. Number one, they're combative. Number two, they don't make any real justifications. As soon as you see that, it's like, oh, it's one of these people. They're so similar to each other that we tend to think they're trolls. They're not real people when they come in because they do the same thing. Is Olivia chick who's an actual person, actual new person, not just another fake name on a troll, came in and said the exact same shit that ESFPs always come in and say. She came in and said, I'm all types. Then she said, actually, I'm an INFP. Actually, all of MBTI is bullshit. And I said, okay. But then she restated it even grander. Everything about MBTI community is bullshit. Did you hear me? Yes, I heard you. I know you want me to respond like meow, meow, meow. And it's like, before long it was, you can't put me in a box. I don't believe in limiting people like that and shit like that. It was the same shit as always, right? Every time. You look at somebody like Marty or Ashadeep or Cloud or Olivia or whomever, right? And what do you see? You see the same thing, this insistent FE demonstrative combative approach that says you must pay attention to me and perceive me as I tell you to. There's no subtlety to it at all. That's FE demonstrative, not FE third. There's zero subtlety to it. It's you will perceive me as meow. It's like, oh, sweet Jesus. I'm a very stable genius. That's fucking FE demonstrative. That's not FE third. I know, I've seen him. He's an incredibly awful human being from the get-go. Yeah, his solution was, I'm going to get the best people. I'm going to get the best people to solve this problem. That's not a TI answer to anything. Okay, so just to do a little bit of correction here, Raphael, I don't know if Gen X said that or if you used the correct word, but the word you're looking for is actually ascription, not subscription. A subscription is something you get to like a magazine or something. An ascription is something you afford. So I ascribe to something, which means basically I support it and follow the tenets of it. Okay, well, whoever said it, the point is I'm making the correction. Subscription is not the right word there. It's ascription, okay? What do you see when you look at the concept of hate crime? I think it's absolutely insane. It's the same kind of mistake as Black Lives Matter. The crime is the same, whether it's motivated by my disliking your hat or my disliking your race or my thinking you're looking funny at me, or it doesn't matter why you committed the crime. We can't ever establish what your mental state was with 100% certainty or even beyond a reasonable doubt. So you might say that we already distinguish between kinds of murder with ranging from involuntary manslaughter all the way up to murder one, and that those things involve the state of mind as well. Well, those things involve the amount of planning, and that's a very different question than their motivation. So if you have murder one, you've planned it and followed it through and got. And I don't care who is corrected. I'm just correcting the use of the word. Okay, it doesn't matter who's responsible for using it wrong in the first place, Raphael. It's something that a lot of people do. Okay, I see it all the time. Every time I see it, I correct it. So I don't know. Just the English teacher in me, I guess. Sorry to be pedantic. Look, Trump wasn't all bad. I'm not saying Trump was all bad. I tend to agree with my dad's assessment that Trump did some things that really needed to be done, which is to say, basically wipe the slate clean of some international agreements and shit that we needed to get out of, and allows a new president to come in and sort of reset that agenda. And that's not a bad thing. I think Joe Biden is an ESFJ, but he also types him as an ESFP. Flow State types him as ESFP as well. I mean, if you think Trump's intuitive, I have no idea what concept of intuitive you have. It's well, this is the thing. We do have a good example. We have clear good criteria for defining evil. 1, make substantial claims without any justification. 2, when asked to provide justification, shifts ground. So when we see those two things, we know that's evil. That is straight up evil, because it prevents people from being civilized and having civil conversations with each other. So it prevents people from using language to meaningfully progress politically, for one thing. As people have to operate both as individuals and members of a community. And the thing is, the problem with the ESFPs is they both claim the most space as individuals, ideationally, and have the least respect for individuals. So it's really frustrating any good thinking person when you encounter it, I've got to poo now. So I'm going to put on some music for the intermission. Oh, I have to poo so badly. I mean, the thing is, we could just call them combatively wrong people, and that might be better. And that's sort of what I was making this video about, is I don't know what to do about the fact that ESFPs are so consistently awful that it's fair to treat them as a demonized group almost, You're living on a time frame I will never know. Alienation and humanity's soul. Imagine you a future after the collapse, returning to the urgency of isolated past. Picturing community, free of metaphysics, hunting buffalo, picking red delicious, knowledge of the seasons, wisdoms of old, fires blazing in the night to keep away the cold. Hostility is kept at bay. Hostility is kept at bay by what you think is in the way. By what you think is in the way of life as children of the land. With an agave weatherman. Imagining a history never could have been. You lecture at the college, advancement is a sin. Lamenting disconnection and every corporate act. Asserting all your feelings, ignoring all the facts. Hostility is kept at bay. Hostility is kept at bay by what you think is in the way. By what you think is in the way of life as children of the land. With an agave weatherman. You find modernity just so banal. Wish you had been born any time but now. And your experience won't run afoul. Visualize nobility sipping on some port, or tribes of peaceful savages in beautiful comport. But few of history's people ever thusly did comport, cause life was nasty, solitary, brutish, poor, and short. Hostility is kept at bay. Hostility is kept at bay by what you think is in the way. By what you think is in the way of life as children of the land. With an agave weatherman. With an agave weatherman. Say hi, chicken pot pie. What you do? Potato stew. What you see? Split pea. Can you be like me? You've got to have a repartee with a chicken pot pie, chicken pot pie, chicken pot pie, a chicken pot pie, chicken pot pie, a chicken pot pie, chicken pot pie, chicken pot pie, a chicken pot pie, chicken pot pie. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's important to eat chicken pot pie. If you want to go downtown and have a hot dog inside a clown's outfit, like a clown eats hot dogs while at work. Eat a jerk. Don't forget that's dirt that you eat. You should have a what now? Chicken pie pie, chicken pie pie. If you want to become alive, chicken pie burn, you will lie in that time. You're not a chicken pie pie, you're a frying kind of kind. Chicken pie pie. A chicken pie pie, chicken pie pie, chicken pie pie, a chicken pie pie, chicken pie pie, a chicken pie pie, chicken pie, chicken pie pie, a chicken pie pie, chicken pie pie, a chicken pie pie, chicken pie pie, a chicken pie pie, 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 chicken pot pie. Blow the first snow an hour ago, even though everybody said, wait, no, she couldn't say, it'd be wrong. She already been there too long. Florence could hear the things they said. She preferred the words in her head. She took the wheel, heading due east in order to feel. She hurtled towards space, picked up the kid, surveyed her mood, doubt on her face. She slowly unglued, doubt on her face, clouded her view. Chicago now route where Theodore lived. They made town Flo and the kid. They drove to a hood where nobody should. Flo did what she said she would. Florence was mad and eager to shout. The kid had been bad and had to get out. Reclining in a seat, the kid was a liar, pretending to sleep. The kid had conspired, now justice at least for what the girl did. Alone onward east, Flo booted the kid. She booted the kid. Alone onward east, Flo booted the kid. Her existence seems entrapped now. Florence can't stay one place long. Now she's on her way to Joplin. But that place too will end up being wrong. That Theo received a call from the kid from Chicago, as previously said. Young like the kid, he hopped in the car. Here's what he did. He drove to a bar, outside of which stood the kid and her stuff. And quick as she could, and just fast enough, she got in the car. They drove away. She had been saved by Theo that day. Onward alone, drove Florence into space, losing their mind, but keeping the faith. Well, I'm back. So, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, Beaufort. I will put up a poll. I don't really think anybody's defending the mental wellness of Biden. I think pretty much everybody knows he has dementia. That's why I wouldn't vote for him. It's not acceptable to elect somebody who has dementia. You know, I also wasn't going to obviously vote for Trump. So it's like, you know, Biden's sort of, it's not so much that he's not qualified as he's disqualified, right? He's disqualified by his dementia. Whereas Trump was simply unqualified. You know, he proved himself unworthy of the office in multiple ways. He's just basically a dishonest person. So this is the thing. There's a kind of behavior. Forget ESFP, ESTP, whatever you want to call anything in the world typology-wise. Forget typology entirely for a second. Can we just get rid of typology out of this conversation completely for a second? There are people who are persistently, combatively wrong in very similar ways to each other. So if you look at Ashadeep, if you look at Marty, if you look at Olivia's channel, who apparently made a video about me last night, what do you see? You see the exact same arguments and the exact same style of argumentation, the exact same paths of wrongness, the exact same combative, ignoring, rejecting all abstract thought and all logical reasoning. And the insistence that you can't put people in a box while concurrently talking about typology all the time and claiming intermittently to be this or that or the other thing. Well, I mean, obviously Marty is somebody who's on the other side of some serious trauma, and that contributes to it as well. But the thing is, I think ESFPs all seem like they're on the other side of some serious trauma. They do. I mean, Brittany, another example of an ESFP who came around here who was combatively wrong, consistently across the board, the same wrong kind of arguments, and so loud about it. It's not like they're quiet about their wrongness. They throw it in people's faces until those people respond. Now, see, if you want to talk about tool function FI, they're trying to engage everybody on an F level. They're never trying to engage people on a T level at all, unless it's to say this needs to have utility to be justified, which is one of their common wrong arguments, These people, whatever you want to call them, that's the definition of evil in my book, is a refusal to actually talk like an adult to another human being. They are intellectually, they're either children or animals or something, because it's impossible to have a conversation that is useful, productive, or meaningful with somebody who's that combatively wrong. So what do we call that person? What do we call those people who are so fucking similar to each other in everything they say? So consistently making the same kind of wrong arguments, so consistently arguing against the utility of language as though they didn't require language to make that argument in the first place. What do we call those people? Is it acceptable to call them what they are, ESFPs? Or do we need to call them something else? We probably do need to call them something else. Now, I did tell you exactly what was wrong. They make a large claim with no justification. When you ask them for a justification, they shift ground and then eventually end up attacking the frame itself of language being meaningful and or abstract thinking being meaningful. That's exactly what they do that's wrong. I just told you. I've told you multiple times. You're not listening, Raphael. I give you 5 specific warrants. No, Raphael, again, let's not talk about Trump. I'm done talking about Trump. That's stupid. I don't want to have this argument about Trump. We're talking about a kind of person who's combatively wrong. I listed a number of different people, not including Trump. Okay. And I've articulated 5 distinct good warrants as to why that's wrong. So for you to say, I've just ranted about it instead of telling you what's wrong about it, that was either a lie or wrong. Right? I mean, the thing is, no, Raphael, that's not a rant. Okay, so now you're being combatively wrong, right? I gave you 5 good reasons. That makes it not a rant. That makes it a good argument. I give you 5 examples of what they do, and these are sort of a checkbox. You can determine that somebody's met the status I'm trying to establish. In other words, I've operationalized my definition. I've done everything a smart person would expect me to do. And then you accuse me of the exact opposite. So why are you doing that, Raphael? Is it because you don't understand, or because you're purposely being a dick, or because you're one of these combatively wrong people? You tell me. If you think I'm ranting, you're not listening. I'm not talking about Trump, Raphael. I just told you that and you weren't listening again. since you weren't listening, and I told you, and you didn't listen again on purpose, now you're on timeout. That's what I'm talking about. This is combative wrongness, right? It's like he comes in, he says, well, why don't you tell him what's wrong about it instead of just ranting about it? Except I did say what was wrong with it. And then I repeated what was wrong with it. And then Raphael ignored what I said again. Right. The discussion with Olivia last night. Exactly. And the thing, or Oliver, or whatever her name is. The thing is, it's funny, Dulles, I'm glad you're here. I was going to say, there's a separate subject I was thinking about in the car on the drive back, which was the difference between comfortable and confident. That people often talk about a desirable state of being as confidence, but really it's comfort. And comfort meaning knowing who you are and being comfortable in your own skin, which took a very long time for me to feel pretty comfortable in my own skin, And I was thinking about you as an example of somebody who probably doesn't project a lot of confidence, but nevertheless has a certain alpha vibe about you because you're clearly very comfortable in your own skin. The weird thing is, I think ESFPs are quite comfortable in their own skin, and yet they don't project so much confidence as, wildly inappropriate arrogance, I guess. Wildly unjustified self bravado. I don't know what to call it. Yes, Mr. Alvieras has got timed out again because he ignored what I said. I don't like that. I really don't. It's like if he has a point and I answer it directly and then he pretends like I didn't. I mean, no, you're wasting my time. He's not treating me like a human being. I'm treating him like a human being, but he's treating me like an animal. Because he doesn't listen to what I say. I don't know. I'm not sure what to attribute it with Raphael. I don't know if he's an ESFP or if he's something else or whatever. I've never gotten any particularly strong TI arguments out of him, but he could be a ESTJ, I guess, but could be an ISFP maybe. I mean, there could be ISFPs that are that combative if they're on the other side of some sort of trauma. Maybe I don't think generally ISFPs are that style of combative, and they also tend to stomp their foot and leave. ISFPs do, whereas ESFPs want to continue fighting forever. Well, I agree with you, Winston Baum. I think that's a very good explanation. They simply want to use their tool function, as everybody does. People use their tool function to deal with the world. Unfortunately, their tool function is FI, and their NE is 8th slot, which means they hate having it pressed on. And their NI is 4th slot, which means they hate having it pressed on. And their TI is polar, which means they don't parse anything. And even their SI is ignoring. They've got the worst possible epistemological layout, right? It's their predominant epistemology function is FI, which happens above NI. Those are your two conscious, but NI is 4th. So it's basically there to support the tool function rather than the other way around, like it should be. And then they ignore SI, so they don't even learn from their mistakes. And then they've got polar TI, so they can't understand what words actually mean. So it's not surprising that they'd be like this, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a problem. It's like this is what barbarism looks like, and it's the challenge is this: what do we do as far as the labeling thing goes? Because it seems to me that it turns out there genuinely is a Trump is TI polar, Beaufet. I don't want to argue with you about this anymore, okay? So enough. Stop. You believe what you want about them. Okay. You can believe whatever you want. I mean, I don't care. I just don't want to argue about it anymore. The point is, whatever Trump is irrelevant. I'm not talking about Trump at all when I'm making these arguments about the barbarity of wrongness. I mentioned it. Very specific people, like Marty, Ashadeep, Queen's Gambit. That's some aggressive wrongness, right? Cloud, Oliva, Eric, Brittany, Courtney from back in the day. What's her name? Chloe. Those three aggressively wrong ESFPs. Chloe was around for a long time. Never did stop being aggressively wrong. And when you get her to sort of calm down and chill for a second, she hated the place. She had to do something destructive to make it interesting, No, that's FI7s is actually an absolute value of it, which means like ENTPs get genuinely hurt. They can get their feelings genuinely hurt, but ESFPs is just an instrumental value. They don't really care about it, and that's But again, I don't want to argue with you about this anymore. So please stop. I'll try not to pay any attention to you, I guess. It's my responsibility to not pay attention to what I want to pay attention to, not your responsibility to stop saying stupid shit. Although it would be appreciated. Well, I messed up there. You have no responsibility to stop saying stupid shit. So I have a responsibility to stop engaging it. So it's on me, and that's FI polar right there. It's like I try to put the responsibility for my feelings on other people. You stop making me feel bad with your wrongness. Stop responding to it, Eric. Like, you'll note how my problem is I can barely stop myself from responding to everything all the time. Whereas, and an ESTP will get into a back and forth with me about something a lot because we want to determine who's right and who's wrong. Whereas an ESFP will avoid any kind of, if they are responsible for a decision, they want to avoid any conversation about the justifications at all. They only want to have conversations about why your positions are wrong because they're not real life or experience. They just want to shit on map making, basically. Anything that's map making is bad. So obviously, as a very mappy type, I find that the very definition of evil. It's like maps are how we are fair to each other. Maps are how we treat each other with respect. Well, when I say mapping, I just mean, people operate in two time frames. One is fluid real time. The other is turn-based. So, for example, this is a turn-based exchange. You ask the question, I'm sorry, but what's mapping? It means something. It retains its meaning. It's indicative of prompting me to make certain kinds of responses, etc. This word exchange is an example of map making or map reading or map updating, depending on your relationship with the words. So if you think words are really not worth anything, then you end up with an ESFP who just shits on anything that's mapping related. Basically, when you say, but here's some logical reasons why you're wrong, they say abstract thinking in general is garbage, or logic is just your way of trying to oppress me with your, Western Western frame of reference, imposing it. They're very culturally relevant, potentially. They just don't. Like, there's another ESFP who was an earnest guy, not a terrible person in any sense, but nevertheless was aggressively wrong. His name was something like rabble rousing. He's a communist guy, and he was arguing pro-communism all the time. But he was an ESFP, and so but the funny thing is, when I actually argued with this guy about the issue, unlike most ESFPs, he kind of wilted a little bit before me. He seemed less damaged, but just sort of like befogged in confusion, it's I've worked with students like this as well. It's very difficult to understand, how can I communicate with you if you don't think words matter at all? I saw that already. Yeah, befogged in confusion. It's like, I've seen it with students too. When somebody's TI polar with SE, when they're ESFP, not ENFPs is a different kind of weird relationships debate, but much more potentially beneficial. In other words, they can use their TE, ENFPs can, to successfully block out TI into things that they just read out loud, basically. But ESFPs, it's kind of tragic. The kids don't understand and have a hard time coming to grasp the fact that they are that sign language interpreter in Africa, who, I don't know if that guy actually believes he was really doing sign language or not. If he did, he's an ESFP. Because to an ESFP, sign language is just motions that somebody makes in front of a group. They don't have to actually mean anything. It's like, who but an ESFP would think, I'll go apply for the sign language interpreter job because I'm sure I know how to do sign language. It's like every other language. It's just noises, or in this case, motions, and no meanings, right? That's the only explanation for this guy. How else do you explain this guy getting himself hired as a sign language interpreter and not knowing how to do any sign language, and standing there smug and satisfied as all shit, doing his make-believe sign language and thinking he's talking to deaf people? Right. Oh, you mean pantomiming shit? I could do that. I know how to pantomime shit. But it's a language, though, and the those motions have meanings. Oh, yeah, I get it. Like, this is woman, this is swimming. I get it. It's easy. And then he goes up there and like, deaf people who are actually watching the thing go, that's FI polar, friends. That is FI polar. Never miss an opportunity to tease the deaf. It's important. Have you teased the deaf today? If not, take advantage of your opportunity to do so now. They're real people too. Hilarious. hilarious. Scott Steiner says, for some weird reason, INTJs can sort of understand what ESFPs are feeling. I think we both throw tantrums when we flip functions. They act like mad INTJs, and INTJs act like emotional ESFPs. Well, the thing is, I find teasing the blind is great fun too. Well, pranking the blind is better. It's easier to tease the deaf and prank the blind. Like replace their red tipped cane with an ordinary cane. Replace their seeing eye dog with a cat. That is a good prank on a blind person. And then watch as the cat leads them all over the place, you know. Slow down, buddy. Fake sign language interpreter marred Mandela Memorial. Does it say in that article whether or not the guy actually thought he was doing sign language? If he did, then he's one of these people that I'm talking about. Whatever we want to call these people, the aggressively wrong people, the people who are just in complete denial about reality and anything that has to do with words. What do we call them if not ESFPs? I don't know. But the thing is, here's the problem I also have is, well, I get why it's a challenge or a problem to call them ESFPs, because then you're saying there's something ontologically wrong with you, you know, that you can't change this, but you're just fundamentally a barbarian. But the problem is this: I actually think that's true, basically. So it runs afoul of my overarching frame of reference, which says don't ontologically assault people. You know, don't say you are bad and you can't change that. that in itself is bad. But I kind of believe that about ESFPs. I don't know what to do about it. It's a conundrum for me, because I do think that basically the solution to evil, or the prevention or elimination or avoidance of evil, is contingent upon communication. And so when I see this group of people who are so aggressively against effective communication, then I think, okay, well, that's evil. We know that's evil. I don't know about a lot of things, but I know that's evil because they're preventing individuals from meaningfully respecting each other through communication. And of course, their advocacies have no respect for people at all. They're whatever they feel like, and it doesn't matter what the impacts are. They'll give people huge indication, huge prescriptions, like, you should believe me. The next day, completely contradict themselves. Didn't mention anything about his motivations. Like, you went on an ISFJ emotional rant about studies that say chronic weed usage affects short-term memory in elderly years. I mean, I do agree that I display ISFJ sometimes, but I would definitely not agree that was an instance of it. I did explain how there's a lot of risk in talking about something like that has such a long history of being abused as a warrant, right? So it's like there's never been a case in history before when anti-marijuana data has been used honestly or accurately. It's always been used dishonestly, inaccurately, and for a specific evil agenda. So it's well, again, Ron, Alan Salon, and Scott Steiner both. It's important to listen to my words, not my tone. So my words were not those of an ISFJ. And if you're paying attention just to my tone, then you're going to be confused a lot, because my third slot FE is pretty selfish, which means I only care about how I appear when I feel like caring about how I appear, you know? And so I'm going to display a lot of different displays. If you were to watch me last night, you would have said I was an INFP probably, you know? it was watch last night's video, and you can see the range of display of somebody who's FE third, FI polar, and it's revelatory of how we really need to not make a mistake of thinking that when an individual is expressing something within their range of being, that they're manifesting some other type. I mean, I could say, as I mentioned before, because I think it was Nathan Reinhold said something about the four sides of the mind, and sort of challenged me to engage it more meaningfully than simply dismissing it. And I began using it at 14, but there is some a good map maker notes important problems with warrants. So there's a warrant there that says basically that chronic weed users begin to develop short-term memory problems or whatever as when they're elderly. The thing is, if we were to accept it as a mechanistic thing, in other words, there's a causal link here between amount or time of marijuana being smoked and dementia or some other cognitive disability, then we should expect to see that there be a in general, you would expect that there'd be some indication of this as a matter of progression, not simply like this, pew, right? If in fact marijuana were causally linked, you'd expect there to be a gradual decline, and you'd expect to see that decline steepen with people who smoke more weed and less steep with people who smoke less weed. And yet, I can tell you in no uncertain terms that there's been no such gradual decline in my cognitive abilities over time. So if in fact it's something that gradually builds up and then triggers at a certain point, then one would have to ask, okay, if I quit now, for example, would it prevent that from occurring? It's like, in other words, it's pretty challenging to establish a mechanism that works like that also causally links. And so it's the point is this, though. And this is where I guess you could say I was like being ISFJ like in referencing my own experience. Okay. And so if it always begins around 65, then one has to ask, why doesn't it begin sooner for people who are more heavily invested in smoking weed? I'm one of the heaviest weed smokers of all time. I mean, I smoke a lot of weed all the time. So it's like, and yet we don't see any gradual progression. So, you'd have to explain the mechanism. Since if you just find a correlation with no explanatory mechanism, it's very easy to draw the wrong conclusion. I have two good examples, one being throat cancer and the other being Alzheimer's disease. So throat cancer, for a long time, cigarette packs said, don't smoke because it causes throat cancer. Why? There was a strong correlation between smoking and throat cancer. There's also a strong correlation between drinking and throat cancer. It was almost equally strong. And it was thought that the two combined made your risk of throat cancer even higher. Except it turns out what causes throat cancer, actually? HPV, blowjobs, and cunnilingus cause throat cancer, not smoking. What happens to correlate really strongly with those two things? Getting drunk and smoking cigarettes. So it's important we be careful in our conclusion drawing, right? Or we'll pull a science and we'll say smoking is responsible for something that it's not responsible for. Let's talk about Alzheimer's disease. Some years back, they determined that the brains that they dissected of dead Alzheimer's patients, they had an unusually large amount of aluminum in them. And so a lot of people started avoiding aluminum, and it was kind of a big, Of course, what's much more likely than quantity of aluminum consumed causing Alzheimer's disease? what's much, much more likely is that Alzheimer's disease affects the blood-brain barrier and permits metals into the brain. It's much more likely a mechanism rather than a cause. In other words, it's an effect rather than a cause. The mechanism that causes that effect is the weakening of the blood-brain barrier, and the effect is the aluminum in the brain. It's not the cause of the Alzheimer's. Most likely. That's the most likely scenario, if you think about it well. But at the time, when people came out with it, everybody said immediately, oh, you should not use aluminum pans, you shouldn't drink out of aluminum cans, or whatever. You shouldn't use antiperspirant that has aluminum in it. And that's the sort of mistake I want to avoid, and I'm especially careful about avoiding when I'm dealing with things like marijuana. And in this regard, I was like an ISFJ. I reference my own experience a lot. That's going to be true of any SI user, though. I have a lot of experience regarding the bullshit anti-drug stuff of the 1980s, personal experience. I've heard lie after lie after lie after lie after lie after lie after lie about marijuana. I've heard them as recently as less than a year ago in my own personal life dealing with Rachel, whose parents had demonized marijuana and tried to turn it into the problem, when the actual problem was their refusal to give her proper treatment for her mental illness. So it's like, am I emotionally attached to this issue somewhat? Yes. And do I see the risks, the barbarity, the evil that comes from demonizing marijuana? Yes. I definitely am clear on that. There's no confusion in me. That is, I've seen it be done to me. I spent a substantial amount of time in my teenage years feeling guilty, feeling like a bad person because I smoked marijuana, until I finally, got over that shit. It wasn't really, though, until I quit drinking that I became any kind of I guess, an advocate on his behalf, really. Now I recognize that it's just it is really wrong to take a stance on other people's temporal bargaining things, which is to say, everybody has their firefighters. That is to say, their occasional indulgences that they rely on when shit's really gone off the rails. And everybody has their managers, which is sustainable shit they do to make their life proceed comfortably and so forth. Who or what made me feel guilty about smoking pot? All those anti-drug classes I took. And it was somewhat guilt to myself. Like, one of the big things that I was concerned about, or I guess you'd say a limiting belief I had internalized, was that smoking pot was going to make me stupid. And I kept telling myself, Eric, you can't smoke weed. You're going to get stupid. It's like, of course, smoking weed did not make me stupid. And they were all lying. They were all lying. So it might very well be the case that there is some link from chronic weed smoking to some sort of mental diminishment over time and old age. There might be a link. I don't know. Even if there is, my position is so much evil has been done already opposing marijuana. So many people have their lives stolen from them because they smoke marijuana. It could be the THC concentration, WCHC. Scott Steiner, may I introduce you to Crescendo, the isn't of all isn't. Look at that shit right there. What is it? 43.29% total cannabinoids. Fuck yeah. 39 point whatever percent THC. Oh, fuck yeah. This is one of the best weeds we've ever had. This Crescendo here. When we go on vacation, we buy fancy weed. When we're here at home, we buy regular weed. But I'll pull a bowl of this in honor of Scott Steiner. He deserves it. I can transubstantiate this one to you, Scott Steiner. Freddie Forgiato, I'll give you a bong rib next, okay? I'm not gonna leave you out, buddy. Don't worry. You're fretting over nothing, honey. Sweetheart, darling, listen, Freddie, I'll get you next, okay? Just have to wait a second. Be patient. Don't stomp your feet. You patiently wait. Scott Steiner's first, okay? He was first in line. You're going to have to wait. I'm not trying to reduce my pain, Scott Steiner. I'm trying to get high. Obviously. Why else would somebody smoke weed? It's a terrible pain reliever. If you're going to have a pain reliever, why don't you take Tylenol? It's a vastly better pain reliever than marijuana will ever be. This is the kind of bullshit I hate. It's like, we don't need to justify marijuana with medical purposes. It's insane. This is one of my managers in life. So are cigarettes, so is coffee, and everybody else has their managers too, but they want to judge other people. It's like somebody else's manager might be shopping. It's like, fuck off. Leave me with my managers. Just leave me alone with my managers, unless you can articulate some particular problem with it. When I was a drunk, you'd have no problem articulating a particular problem with it. There are lots of things you can articulate. It's very difficult for anybody to articulate why marijuana is bad for me. I've never heard anybody successfully articulate that at all. That's for you, Scott Steiner. This will emotionally regulate you. That's some good shit. That's some fine ass marijuana right there, let me tell you. That's the supermodel of marijuana. Do you know that Prince Harry probably doesn't need to get a visa? I mean, he probably doesn't need to get a green card. Do you know why he probably doesn't need to get a green card? I mean, there's nothing Tally-esque about me at all. There never has been. Tally didn't turn into Tally. He's always been Tally. There are a lot of stereotypes like that about weed smokers. I've never identified with any of those stereotypes. And it's like, you're talking to me right now. Well, Prince Harry, I don't know about if he's formally an ambassador or not, but he's eligible for an H-1B visa. H-1B visas make it such that, let's say you're a supermodel. Well, then you don't need a green card. It's fine. You can come over and chill all you want and do whatever you want, basically. As long as, it's like, if you're famous enough, you don't need a regular green card. You can have an H-1B visa. Or if you're an Indian software tech guy, right? Yeah, well, that's what it's mostly known for, okay? It's mostly known for Boba Fett's offensive and here to be removed racial slur comment. That's what it's mostly known for, is hiring people from India to do tech jobs, H-1B visa. The lesser known parts of the H-1B visa program are basically, if you're famous, you don't have to have a green card to work in the United States. So people don't talk about that part of the H-1B visa program. They only talk about the tech part. But supermodels don't have to get a green card, and musicians don't have to get a green card, and lots of other people don't have to get a green card to come work in the United States temporarily if they're famous. I mean, they don't see it that way. People from India who are hired to work in tech jobs in the United States don't view the tech jobs they're hired to work at it as meat packing and grape picking. They view it as that's probably a different kind of H1. Might be H1A. Is there an H-1A visa? Because H-1B specifies having specifically like having rare skills, in other words, not being just a laborer. So I would guess there might be an H-1A visa that's for farm laborers, because H-1B specifically is it's about, we're going to gain more from you immigrating here than you are from immigrating here. If that's not the case, then you don't get an H-1B visa. That's for you, Freddie Forgiato. Well, I'm specifically knowledgeable about H-1B visas because it was the subject of a debate topic. Tried to prep debate cases on H-1Bs. And I know from my research into that H-1Bs don't cover farm laborers. So I suspect there's another H-1 that does. But the reason I specified H-1B is because that was the one the debate topic was on. All right. That's what I'm going to do this morning. Thank you for reminding me, Lisa. I've got a fun video in the works from our trip to Palm Desert yesterday. We took a lot of little videos. I'm clipping them together. I got to make a few pieces of narration to go over some of the still images, and I'll be uploading that this morning. Should be about 7 minutes long when it's done, I would guess. No, I haven't watched Persona yet, but I'm not going to either. I don't tend to watch shit by ESFPs. It's like I already know I don't like being made angry, so why do I go seek it out? I'm not a receiving type by nature. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end the stream and work on that video. It was very comfortable temperature-wise down there yesterday. Winston's mom. It was like 72 degrees or something. It's a beautiful day for exploring and stuff. So I think I'm going to be happy with the video that I come out with here, and I think that means at least Winston's mom's going to like it. Nobody else. These videos don't get very many views, but I think they're really fun, and Winston's mom's affirmation of them helps to encourage me to continue making them, because I think she's right. I think they're good videos. We did not run into Charo. No Charo. I find it hard to believe that Charo is still alive. Is that really true that Charo is still alive? Charo. She was like in her 40s when I was a little kid. Why doesn't it say what year she was born? Her birthday and year have been a matter of some dispute. She was born in 1941, but after immigrating to the United States, she said she was born in 1947, then changed it to 1949. In her final change, she asserted in 1977 court hearing that her passport and naturalization papers were wrong and that her birth date was January 15th, 1951. So she was born in 41. So she is, let's see how old she is. If she was born in 41 and it's 2021, then that's 60 years makes it 2001. 80 years. She's 80 years old. And yeah, she's still active. Official website. Charo has an official website. She has one child. Charo.com. Except fucking stupid Europe. Fucking Europe. You need to stop with your European nonsense. There's all these musics. Charo, what are you doing? Picture of you sweeping? Charo, you're... How weird. How incredibly weird. This woman's 80 years old. If you've not been to charo.com, please go to charo.com. I think Charo... The thing is, when I'm talking about these videos, is I've gotten much smarter about doing them. I used to record way too much. Now I try to record little segments that are going to require no editing. If it doesn't come out, delete it right away. And so it's yeah, I'm hating on the EU. Fuck you and your privacy rules. Okay? Fuck you and your entire union of Europeans. Yeah, I said it. I'm sorry. Hey, EU. Fuck you and your entire union of Europeans. And your fucking privacy bullshit. There's no right to privacy. Get through your thick European heads. God. And take your euros. I want you to change them back into liras and Deutschmarks. All right? And francs. I'm sick of this shit. I'm going to end on that note. Otter self. How dare you? That damns most of the United States. I won't accept it. I hereby slap your face with a glove, sir. There. I'm going to walk away now before I see whether you slap me back with it. Goodbye, everybody. See you later. I'm going to publish a video pretty soon, hopefully. Maybe a couple hours.